Hey, friends, I am so excited to introduce you to my next podcast guest on the Lucy Smiles Living Room. This is September 2024. And 9 months ago, I started working with Julie Reisler. And while Julie is a mentor, she was mentoring me. She's a coach, she's a speaker, she's a teacher, she's also a student. She is someone who I have referred to as my podcast doula. And so 9 months later, after working with Julie, I get to have her on the actual show that she helped me to create through her wisdom and her teachings and her mentorship. And so Julie Reisler is such a beautiful soul. And in this conversation, we dive deep into everything from spirituality. We also dive deep into where we have been and the things that we went through, the experiences that taught us beautiful lessons. And we have a multifaceted conversation around intuition, around what happens when we use it, and also what happens when maybe we don't. And I really believe that this conversation can be a guiding light for those who have an opportunity to listen in or to watch on YouTube, and potentially be able to give you an opportunity for you in your life to look at maybe what's going on where you feel a little bit afraid. Maybe you're scared to take that next step like I was. And I'm hoping that something that we chat about today can help you to see a vision for your future and even steps that can help you to get there. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Julie Reisler. And I really just hope you enjoy this beautiful conversation. Hey, friends, welcome to Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. My heart is fluttering today as I have such a beautiful soul here with me to have conversation in the living room. And it really just has been a journey of 8 months that Julie Reisler came into my life officially after me finding her. And I guess you would even call it like being magnetized towards her energy. And so today on the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast, we have Julie Reisler, who has been a super impactful energy in my life over the last 8+ months regarding my own brand, my own essence. And I just wanted to say thank you, Julie, for taking this time in this moment to be here. And I'll do my best to not cry through the whole thing. Julie, how are you?
Bring on the tears. I feel them myself, Diane. I'm
Ooh.
just so grateful to be here. And this was something, this dream lived in your heart, and we talked about it and moved through it. And you really, like, to be here right now is such a gift. And I think anybody listening, this is just a reminder, never to bury your dreams, never. And it's just such a gift to be here, being part of your dream.
Thank you, Julie. And before we even get started, I do want to, for those of you who may not know who Julie Reisler is, I will start from the top from what I know about you already, and we're going to tap into more of your inner essence. But Julie Reisler is an intuitive guide. She is a manifestation coach, I can tell you firsthand. She's also the host of the You-est You podcast, which is actually a top ranking podcast in how I found her. I will go into more around that in a little bit. She's also an author of her book, Get Your PhD in You, which I tapped into, and is just such a beautiful reminder for us around what that looks like to be our own essence. And also, Julie is the founder of the Intuitive Life Designer Coaching Academy. And I know she also has an amazing new school happening in the fall that she will touch on as well. And amongst all of those things, Julie has been featured in Forbes. She's been in Mind Body Green. She's been featured in the Chopra Center Bustle, Thrive Global. Not to mention, she's also a multi-time TEDx speaker. And Julie, I will say, through all the credentials and all of the brilliant accolades around you, that firsthand for me, the experience that I have had is you have been such a guiding light in my personal journey, what that looked like for me to allow myself the gift of finding out who I really am. And I would tell you that if there was anything in terms of a title that I would give you, if we want to go by labels, which we don't typically do, is that you are a holder of space. And so truly, I mean, you've been such a holder of space for me over the last 8+ months and allowed me to find my own North Star that through your guidance allowed me to find it for myself. And I think that's really important. So, Julie Reisler, I'm so blessed to have you here. I'm so used to watching you on podcasts on YouTube with other people. And now I'm like, is this what I'm seeing? So thank you so much. I hope that is the crystal clarity of just a little bit of who you are as a woman, as a human, as a leader, as a guide. And yeah, I'm really excited to really dive into this vortex together. We can go so many places. So strap on your angel wings and your butterfly wings because this is going to be epic. So, Julie, I would love for you to maybe start off for us. One of the things that I was thinking about and feeling in my heart before we started is it's so important for people to maybe know why are you here in this moment sharing the gifts from your heart. I don't even want to say why are you doing what you're doing, but more like why are you being who you are and how did that start? So can we take it all the way back to give people a bit of a glimpse of where it all started?
Absolutely. And, as you were sharing, and just, I have to say, this feeling of gratitude, of trusting that we're always where we're meant to be, even when it doesn't always feel that way. And I think that's actually a good place for me to start. What came to me intuitively as you were asking that question was allowing your mess to be the message, right? Allowing those challenging times, those moments of darkness, of what the F is going on. That for me, as much as those were such challenges for me growing up, and I'll give like the quick overview of that. What I'm starting to see now is I'm about to head into my 5th decade. It's taken time. I am a
Wow.
slow learner and a late bloomer is all I got to say, because I'm like, I'm just starting to get it. I'm like, oh, those crappy moments are actually fertile soil. It does not feel that way, but think about, even, I'm laughing because what's coming to me is, even our recyclables, our trash, our what we think is what we need to let go of. I'm just going to say it. Even, we found like horse manure, right? Like it ends up making the most fertile soil. So
Yeah.
I'll say this, I really struggled growing up. I have two very, very loving parents who loved me and also really did not know how to parent me or kind of know how to deal with emotions. They did their very best. I kind of parented myself and them a little bit. And I think for me, the real nosedive started to happen in my teens. I just really did not know how to handle the pressure. I grew up in a very high achieving area, affluent area in Boston, actually. And I did a whole number on myself. I just didn't know how to love myself. I abandoned myself. I really struggled with just finding my way, being myself, not leaning on people pleasing. And for me, addiction ended up being one of my biggest crutches. So, for many of us, when happy childhood and then really struggled, you wouldn't have known this, right? So it was a lot of like just wanting things to feel better than they were. So people pleasing is about doing what you have to for people to like you. But when you do that, it's like I lost a sense of myself. And so I used food and sugar. That was the way that I dealt with blocking those emotions. And that continued. And it was like my crutch. It was my way of, I think, really putting a wall up and not having to feel things that I didn't want to feel, whether it had to do with, I was like an old soul in a younger body. I didn't know how to handle dating, and just moving through, I think, teen years was hard for me. And so that was my comfort. And it just led to a lot of doing whatever I had to do around people pleasing. And long story short, I ended up getting married really young to a really good person. I did not know myself the way I did today, and really found myself in a situation where, I was miserable in who I was, and I knew something was off. And I felt like the light went off inside of me. It felt like passion and light went off, and that is not who I am. And it was actually there was a moment of grace. I really considered ending my life. This was in 2003. And I couldn't stop eating this bag of M&Ms. I've talked about this before, but I really had this moment of like, do I just drive into the tree? Like, I don't know how to stop this. And ended up finding a support group, ended up through that night hearing my intuition say, Julie, go to a support meeting. Just go to one meeting. I'd heard about these meetings and I went to that first meeting and like my whole life changed. I really say from that moment on, I started this inner excavation, and that led to this realization: we are all so loved. We are all so full of gifts and wisdom, and these things are not to be overlooked, and it doesn't live in the brain and the mind. And what I've learned is you can't bypass feelings,
Mhm.
and so being your You-est You, right? That's my podcast. That's a lot of what I do today. That's been 10 years. I left a corporate job. I got divorced. Like, I did everything at once. I don't recommend that. Single mom, decided to leave my job. I'd finished my master's degree in coaching, and I was like, I'm going to start my own business. And I realized that for me, trusting my inner guidance, that was the key. And being your You-est You, being your most authentic self, following your North Star. You had said that earlier. I really believe we all have that roadmap within us. It's just, it's not the same as everyone else's. And the the most important thing for me has been learning how to follow my inner roadmap and
Mhm.
my own North Star, and helping others to do that, and not doing it because I have the answer for others, but like you said, that holding space. And so the mass becoming the message. I've done a lot of inner work. I continue to do it every day. To me, it's about becoming more and more heart-centered, more and more of yourself, and more of service. And that's really it for me. Is I just, like you, I just want to really let other souls, other human, family members know you're not alone, and we can go through the toughest times, and it can change, and there is light, and we are light. And in fact, there's a whole other world waiting for us, a whole nother consciousness. And this is part of why we're here right now. This is part of our awakening. It is part of why we said we're coming to this planet at this time, this, Aquarius shift and ascension. And it's no joke. It's not easy, but I do
Mhm.
think we're here, as Ram Dass said, to walk each other home.
Wow, it's so many things have come to me from you saying this. I also noticed, so thank you so much first and foremost for being so vulnerable, and I think that's where the growth lies, in the ability for us to share our experiences so that other people can say, "Oh wow, so it's not just me. She went through that. And it's not saying she went through that and now she's, it's we're always going through something."
Yeah.
And so many things came to me while you were sharing that. One of which is, we don't have to wait until it's over for us to then teach or guide or mentor. And so, because it's never going to be over. And I said this on a reel the other day, that we're either, my coach, my mentor, one of my mentors that I was with back in 2016 had said, you're either three things. You're one of three things. You're either going through something, in something, or on your way out of something. And you have to realize too that not just one at a time. So you could be going through something while you're already in something, and going out of something while the other one's coming. It's just multifaceted. And so I love what you said, is how you shared what you shared, but also the fact that you decided to take your experience, not wait until you're over it, but then you said, how can I move into what you're doing now professionally, right? And it's your You-est You while you're being you in it. So I think that's a really key thing for people to realize. Don't try to get all the healing done, right? I will be healed and then I'll go out and follow my path or my passion. And I can say that for my own self, is that I could have waited, and we'll get into, how we met. The story, I think, is really important for people who may not know who you are, like I didn't know who you were, to kind of, share with them the overall scope of how we came together. But I could have waited and said to myself, well, who am I to start Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast? And who am I to continue to write how I've been writing? Who am I to want to lead for people to look at life's blessings rather than focusing on the burdens? But the reason why for me, my writing, I know, has touched so many people, was I would write while I was in it. And that's where the impact is. So for me, when I met you, I was hiding a little bit. Things were going on, and I found you. And there's no such thing as coincidences. Is when I found you, I realized everything is on purpose. And I could either take the message, or I could, 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 take the message, or I co reach out to you or say, oh, wow, it sounds like something I may look into later when I feel like I'm better. So your story started back in 2003-ish, like when this, ascension started to happen for you more actively, if you will. Back in 2003, I remember where I was. In 2004, I remember living in Vancouver and I was going on the SkyTrain to these energy circles, but nobody else was doing it. So I would be on my own, hoping that I was going somewhere in the dark, that I would come back out from the dark in these places. And so back in the day, Julie, there was not a lot of retreats, circles, healing workshops. So, can you tell me, for you, through your journey, because I can relate, but I want to ask you, how did you keep the bravery and the courage to stay the course
Mm.
when, and did you have the safety and the support? And if you didn't, I would love for people that are watching and listening to us who may say, well, it's not as easy for me. I have XYZ happening in my house, or I have XYZ happening at work. I really want people to know that they can find support and community so they can be guided and held like you hold space for me. So can you just kind of encapsulate out on that for people to give them some hope, if you will?
Absolutely. And I think even just before I do that, something you just said that is so beautiful, so important, and so counterintuitive is to share what's happening amongst with others amidst the mess, amidst the struggle, the challenge, whatever you're going through. A lot of us, and we see this, right, a lot of times in social media, the after picture, the picture that is Photoshop, that is whatever, that like, okay, I'm all done now. And something I've been learning, and I've learned because of that moment in 2003. And I started, going to a support group. And then I found, I'd already been to therapy, but I'd found more therapy and coaching and programs. The Artist's Way with Julia
Oh,
Cameron was one of my biggest, I had a, sponsor in a 12-step program, and she did a 9-week program or 12-week program. And we dove into that book. And that changed my life. It's actually what guided my Get a PhD in You, my book. I was like, I need to create a workbook that helps people to actually excavate themselves, because I was so transformed by that. I started to look at, wait a minute, what did I used to love to do?
mm,
Oh yeah, I used to love to dance. I used to have imaginary camera crew and friends, and I was doing shows in my backyard all the time. Interview, like when Phil Donahue was on,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
and I'd interview people and I would talk about their stories, and I would see the audience and the cameras. And I mean, now I realize I don't know how imaginary it might have been, like spirit friends, but I saw it so often. I was like, I don't know. I want to help people. That's
Mm,
so it brought me back to my heart, to what lights me up. Right. So I think, this sharing when it's not all baked, right? You put the cookies
mm,
in and they're not all baked. When you can open it up and be like, yeah, no, it's not all baked. And in fact, I made a mistake in the recipe. I'm going to make them again.
oh,
Um, that's
huge.
that's where we get at the heart level. That's what's
Yeah.
missing often. And
Mhm,
I'm going to say this. I really am grateful to my first husband. He was very supportive of all of the support groups and the meetings and the things that I was doing.
mhm,
And that gave me time before my kids came about to really dive deep into myself and do this deep inner work, where instead of, avoiding, I went through. I think the phrase is, to get to the other side, you got to go through and then go through some more. Like, you're not bypassing, doesn't work. So I got some deep into really looking square in the face, my fears, my resentments towards myself, all of that. But I want to say, as I started getting healing and having more and more of a feeling of peace and love for myself, that's really what I really believe we're all seeking, is to
yeah,
feel at peace and love with ourselves, and to feel the peace and love, the goodness of this universe of divine intelligence and support. I It felt like an excavation, and
mhm,
little pieces were chipped away. And then the next thing I knew, I was in a corporate job. I was doing really well there. I had a coach that I worked with. I went to a personal training program, development program, that not Tony Robbins, but similar, but really, really, really intense. And it shifted something in me. And I realized, okay, I have to do this work. I have to do it. I don't know what's happening, but I have to like give back and help others. And that's part of my own walking the walk. So got a degree, was working. I mean, none of this was opportune time. I got divorced. I was a single mom. And then I heard my intuition say, it's time to leave. You got to start your own business.
Ugh.
I had no business background. I had a father with PTSD who was in and out of jobs at all times, and we didn't understand he's a Vietnam veteran. We had no idea. Very loving, also had a lot of issues, and very unstable financially. I grew up with a lot of mixed messages, and so there was no backing there. Like there was no family, trust fund or backing. That just didn't occur. I was getting divorced, I was in the process of getting divorced, 2 kids at that time, I think under the age of 7. And my intuition is like, you've got to do this. So I just want to say, and I didn't really save for this. I wouldn't advise doing what I did. But it was so clear. This is what I have to do from my heart. Like I just can't imagine myself. And it's so funny now when I look back. I mean, I was on a very different path. Very different path. What makes me laugh is I was straightening my hair. Like you wouldn't even recognize me. I looked really different.
Oh, wow.
And I was really trying to be, I think, something else. And that doesn't
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
ever. So yeah, no, when I began this whole business and then eventually podcasts, other things like that, there was no safety net. I mean, and then I was a single mom, and then I started dating and I ended up getting remarried. But we decided, I was like, nope, we're going to have our own separate finances. I want to be empowered here. I don't want to rely on somebody. And for me, having had a situation that felt a little more controlling, even though I set it up that way, I was like, no, I'm going to be able to do this. So I did not, like, I'm just saying, your dream has validity. I love Rumi's quote, just speaks to me every day. What you're seeking is seeking you. This business, it blossomed. And I really believe it's the divine that's blossoming through me, through the work I do, just like the divine is blossoming and lighting up through you and the work you're doing. And I do believe when we follow energy, we follow the light, there are things that can happen that are beyond what we can imagine, because especially when we're here to be making an impact and be of service. So yeah, and there's a lot I learned. Trust me, I had never run a business. I had no idea about paying taxes the first year. It was quite a mess.
Yeah.
But so I'm saying that because it wasn't like I was handed a stash of, of bills and just said, okay, do what you want. Now that's great if you have that. And that's an awesome thing to have, but that wasn't my story.
Yeah. One thing that's wild. And one thing that spoke to me through many things that you shared was you said, but that's how I set myself up. When you were talking about the other version of financial independence or dependence, so important when you called yourself out on that. Not like you had to call yourself out, but you just like case in point and matter of factly said, and I set myself up for that. That to me is what allows us to reevaluate our standards, reevaluate our boundaries or lack of boundaries, and to be able to, most importantly, take accountability for our own life. Like how did I create this? And I think that's really important. And it's always a work in progress, right? And so that was really important to me that I heard you say that. I think that's really valuable for people who are watching this or listening on podcast platforms without the video, is how are we setting ourselves up? Are we setting ourselves up for self-sabotage, or are we setting ourselves up for success? And we're not always going to be setting ourselves up perfectly, right? When you said taxes, I cringed. Taxes are always a mess. I don't care who you're working with. No. But I think it's really important that we can say, okay, so what, and to evaluate and take inventory once in a while to say, okay, so what's working, what's not, what can I do better? How can I enhance what's already going on? What do I need to do to declutter and maybe have a excavation of sorts, without having the guilt, and being able to have that so we can continue to empower ourselves. One of my resources that I found years ago is psychocybernetics. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but talks about self-image. And it really ties in with like the Think and Grow Rich philosophy and all of these different components of it always comes back to us. So for you, Julie, while you were going through this, it seemed like you made a lot of decisions in a short period of time. How did you stay the course? Like, how did you not give up? One of the people that you've actually interviewed, Marie Forleo, who's one of my ultra favorites, you interviewed her on your podcast amongst a myriad of beautiful souls who are changing the world. And her book is Everything is Figure Outable. And so while you were sharing this, that's all that kept coming to me, is like everything just seems to be figure outable for Julie. So can you touch a little bit more on, practically speaking, how did you keep on going? Because that's a thing for people.
Yeah, what a beautiful question. And, you know, it's so interesting because I've been asked this before. And I think there's something to, I'm going to go to like the root of that, because I think there's actually
Please.
even something underneath that, which is
Mhm.
when we as human beings, when we're really aligned and in tune with, we're all energy, right? So when the energy feels heart centered, when it feels something that's why I love the artist's way. It really helps you get like what does move your energy, what lights you up, what those great questions, like what would you do in the middle of the night for free? Those kinds of questions. When I started to tap into, I mean, really to go from the self-loathing, and I forgot to mention, I had there was a lovely gift of the autoimmune illness that coupled with all of that was going on 12 years
Yeah.
ago, that I see as a gift now, because I really believe a lot of autoimmune has to do with self-loathing and learning to love ourselves. I really do.
Mhm.
That's been one of
I
my,
agree.
yeah. So
Mhm.
for me, the transformative effect of really finally learning to love and honor myself, and then of course having more of that for others, was so palpable and powerful. I couldn't imagine not helping other people want to do this and to feel this way. It felt like I touched my finger like on a hot, instead of a hot stove, it was like that kind of feeling, but it was like a pulsing, love-filled, like I've got to do this. It was so much
Mhm.
energy. And so when you feel lit up, and the intersection of that and then purpose, when you put those together, it becomes, for me, I'll say it's become, um, insatiable is not the word, but it's like I can't not do this. And so
Mhm.
there have been times, look, having young children and raising them and having a business and having a new marriage, like this was not I was not the best timing, right? Like it would have been much easier to wait till now as they're getting, close to going to college. But
Mhm.
there were times financially it would be a great month, not a great month. It just shifted a lot. And then times where I, you know, like ideas would change, but I will say what's never changed is like there's this light or this burning in my soul, in my heart, that's like, I've got to do this. It's not even a option. It feels like I am being propelled by something else, like a fiery, lit up desire. It's a
Right.
burning desire. So I would say when you feel a burning desire, that becomes the way shower. That becomes the candle. That becomes the flashlight. That becomes the North Star. And it hasn't always been easy. I mean, I've been doing this now, my own business, 10 years, coaching 15, but I can
Mhm.
tell you it's not always been easy. Yet I have never not felt that. And the day I don't feel that, I'll do, like, if I stop feeling that, I would do something else. But
Right.
this still feels so on fire for me. It's even more so now, I think, especially as there's so much happening in our world.
Mhm.
And that's something for all of us to pay attention to. Pay attention to your energy. Where do you have energy? Where do you not have energy? If I don't have energy in something,
Yeah.
I'm learning to just drop it and let it go. It's not for me to do anymore.
So true. As you were sharing that, so many things, it's so interesting. I'm like, there's so many downloads coming to me as you're sharing all of this. And I want to touch on number one, when you were explaining that, the burning desire that you have to keep on going, a quote came to me that was shared with me many years ago. And it said, it's what you do with who you are.
Yeah.
And so many of us as multifaceted entrepreneurs, we like to do a lot of different things. And I used to, in the past, I like to say that instead of like I am, it's like, no, in the past, I used to judge myself for wanting to do so many things. And we'll stick to one thing, you get the whole rigid perspective from people. And I realized that's not why I'm here. I'm here to be who I am and to do those things that are an extension of who I am. And so And having said that, with your sharing of this story, I actually want to touch on how we met, and I'll do it without crying.
Mm.
As you were sharing your story, that you said, it's like the conviction that you had is pretty much the word I think that makes sense to me in my heart when you were sharing, like, it's like you had to do that. Is if you didn't, then I wouldn't potentially. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't find somebody else but it would not be the same. And so I'm like, "Whoo, shoot. I can't stop doing this because who's waiting for me so they can?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I need to work out harder, then I'm gonna get more water in." I'm thinking of all these things now. And I'm like, I wanna have the energy that I know other people deserve of me. And it's not to be a people pleaser, it's to be of who I am, just like you were. And so I do wanna share, I think it's really important to kind of explain how I met you, because it's really, really key as part of this whole conversation for people to see where in their own life can they look at where the magic is waiting for them. So for Julie and I'll never forget my girlfriend Cien, who's actually episode 1 on the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. Cien Tan is a soul friend of mine. She shared with me on my Facebook Messenger back in, maybe it was November of 2023, so about 9-10 months ago, that this episode, because she knows how much I love Greg Braden. I actually met Greg Braden in 2008 at the Sands Hotel in Vegas for the I Can Do It conference when Louise Hay was there. I think she was actually floating. I don't think her feet actually touched the floor, but she was alive at the time. I'll never forget her flowy, beautiful dress and just outstanding. So I was introduced to Heart Math in 2008 at the I Can Do It conference with Greg Braden. And so I've loved Greg. I love Heart Math. I love just heart coherence. So Cien sends me your video. And I'm sitting here and we have the big screen. So Anthony's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just watching this woman with Greg." He's like, "Well, put it on the big screen," and like just the TV screen in our living room. And all he could say instead of about Greg, he's like, "Who is this?" I go, "It's Greg." He's like, "No, who is that?" And I go, "I don't know." He's like, "Who is this woman who's interviewing Greg?" And I said, "I don't know." And I had to stop it to see your name. I said, "Julie Reisler." And he said, "Now that's how you do a podcast." And I said, "Wow." He's like, that's there's your podcast. That's how she's sharing her heart and her genuine essence. He's like, "That's Lucy Smiles Living Room." And I was already hiding the living room for, like, I was doing I was part of a Think and Grow Rich mentorship program in 2021. And I did this visualization where I had to share with our group my life in essence. And it was like a 30 minutes I had to share it. And in that I said, "And I'm the host of Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. And I'm interviewing people who have their essence and they're talking about their North Star." And I just made it up. And then it wouldn't go away at that point. And so going to Colombia, I went to Dr. Joe in January before I met you. And I was on the walking meditation and it came back up. And it was like, "This is waiting for you." And so, Julie, when you came into my life, that is when I found who you were. I watched the rest of the episode because I love Greg Braden. And I creeped you out on Instagram and I scrolled your reels. I kid you not, I scrolled your reels and I stopped. And it was your reel that said, "Are you procrastinating launching your podcast?" And I just sat there and my heart was like, "Are you actually kidding me?" And so that's when all of a sudden, I share this with people because I really want them to get this. Because it was scrolled, it was down your reels, it was a little bit older, maybe a couple of days older. So I looked and you had already that day, it was 4:00 in the afternoon. And I think your masterclass, your free masterclass or whatever it was just hours before. And I was like, "Nope, I'm going to register anyway because I bet she has a replay." So I had to actually register after it was done and I got a replay. And then I was able to come on with you in this beautiful group of people for this intimate, completely like just amazing. I think it was 2 or 3 Mondays in a row teaching people how to launch their podcast. And you gave so much valuable information. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm not done with this woman. And so that's how I reached out to you and said, "No, I need more from you. I want more from who you are." And it was because of you through all of those steps of me being called and then just answering the call. And that's when you and I worked together and you were my doula for my podcast. And that is why all of this exists, through your guidance, through making my own decisions. No one can make you do anything. But I think it's really important, all of those things, because you decided to follow your North Star. So I hope that encapsulates everything in terms of, as you were speaking, if we procrastinate a prompting to follow our own, how many other people, it's a ripple effect. whether it's positive or negative, right? Because everything is contrast. We live in a world of duality. And so I wanted to share that this is where we sit now is very emotional for me, because I think of all that I've gone through since January. I said, let's start in January. I worked with you for 4 full months, and you were so present with me. And one of the coaching sessions, I need to share this, is one of our coaching sessions, our last one, you asked me if we could do more of a heart-centered ritual session. And that just tied it all together, because you saw in me that I was in my head and in my doing. And you're like, Di, let's do a being session. I'm like, okay. And that changed my world. So can you touch on, so you are the epitome of your You-est You. You are the epitome of a PhD in you. And I know that you're still flourishing to all these different dimensions. Like, it's almost like you've just begun. So can you share around who you are and what you do with who you are? What makes it so unique? I know that it is, but I want to hear from you, if you can share that with those that are just blessed to be here right now, what that looks like, and why do you choose that modality of coaching instead of the checklists? And there will be checklists if you need them. We need to get stuff done, but we're not doing them in a place of doership. We're doing them in a place of intuition. I think is just brilliant. So I want to leave it up to you now that I've shared that, because I think it's just so needed in these times right now. And you're such a gift.
Oh, I'm so touched. I'm so touched by what you said. And I have chills, and it's funny. It's almost like living it again. And you know what I'm reminded? When we say yes to really being used for the highest good, not just our highest good, the highest good,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the divine can play with us. That's where we can meet new soul friends or soul family. And with you right away, I was like, soul family, who is this? Like, who is this angel? And that is exactly the point for each of us when we are tapping into our guidance, when we're following that energy, when we're being courageous and saying, I don't know how, but I don't need to know how. I'm going to follow good orderly direction. Another word for God, right? Good orderly
Ooh, I've
direction.
never heard that before at all. That's
Good
brilliant. Yeah.
orderly direction. Yeah.
Wow.
When we follow that, right? So that's the beauty. And when we look back, it's like flipping over the tapestry and oh my gosh, like those knots and that weird thread I put in there. Now it's like, no, we needed that. That was needed. And I just think of it this way. I can't see, our eyes are facing forward. We don't have eyes all over our head, but there is a higher guidance that does. And so, I think going into the way that I work or teach and why it's so important, and I know anyone listening, we're in the same vibration because it's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Our like attracts like. And
Yeah.
I knew that with you. I remember one of the things that has developed over the years, we all have this treasure box in us. I really believe we all have psychic intuitive abilities, no question. I mean, it's like batteries included, but many of us don't get a manual and we don't know how to use it. And what I have found over the years in both being clinically trained as a coach, but also doing a lot of inner work and leaning on my intuition and tapping into this greater spirit realm of higher consciousness, is that a lot of these abilities have developed. And so I remember with you right away, I saw it. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, it's like trippy. It's kind of what we're doing now, and beyond, honestly. And people that, are going to be listening and meant to work with you so you can serve at the highest good. That's where we all pass it on when we're being, you're being your You-est You, you're being your authentic, connected higher self. So for me, I had a coach that changed my life 15 years ago. He asked me a question that literally, I'm talking like it changed my life. I didn't know whether to stay married or not. I had 2 very, very young kids. This was not like an opportune time. My family is a little more open, but the person I was married to is in a family where it's like, you do not get divorced. I'm sure others listening from certain faiths and experience might have had that same family dynamic. And I knew in my heart, great person, but things were shifting and I had to honor myself. And this coach said to me, Julie, if you knew your life would be fantastic either way, what would you do? It was the first time I'd ever heard it's said that way where it was like, oh, life could be great either way. Are you kidding? I thought I was like doomed either way. I mean, I really thought my life was over. That that shifting, which we know is like a quantum shift in the questions, what
Mhm.
happens is our brain, we shift the minute we ask a new question. It's actually similar to what we see in quantum physics. I won't even try to explain it, but you observing the what's happening changes what's happening. So a new question changes your mind, changes your brain chemistry, changes the solutions. So he said that, and right away my body said, I don't want to stay in this marriage. I just knew. And I decided that day, I'm going to make a new vow. I'm going to get married and to myself. I'm going to make a vow with myself that from here on out, I'm going to um, honor myself and honor my truth. And not perfectly, but I'm going to do that. I actually have a ring I got. That's a whole other thing, another story for another day. But I was like, I'm going to marry myself. That is really, truly what is needed here. And I need to honor and realize that things could be okay. And I'm doing something that would be very upsetting, but that also felt true. It can be the both and.
Mm.
And then I coached this program and then I went back to school and I got trained. And I just found there's so many different modalities. There's so much about this kind of coaching that really was making change. And then I started to see the power of intuition when you add it. And I wasn't trained in intuition. This is something that's developed. And it
Yeah.
honestly took something because I have a certification program. I've certified over 100 coaches. I teach at
Yep.
Georgetown. And I realized it's an and, for me, bringing in all of the senses that are beyond the five senses, our energy, our chakras. So the gift for me is I do see, sense, and feel people's higher self, especially once you're in my energy field, like once we have a conversation. And that's what happened with you. That's what I love to do. And I believe there are others of us who can do that. And I think those that really are called to this work of healers, coaches, we were able to envision, we're able to see, hold space for your dream, your heart, your higher self. And that's what happened. I saw this with you and more and more, which just beginning. And I'm, seeing it with myself and being patient, right? It happens in divine timing. So to me, supporting the expansion into one's higher self is where I am lit up. I think it mirrors nature. When you look at the natural laws, I just
Right.
talked about this with Aaron Apke, right? Natural,
Woo! Love
he's
Aronofsky.
right? Nature does this. This is what nature does. It's constantly evolving and expanding, changing and shifting and pruning and dying and rebirth and expanding and growing. We're part of nature. So this is actually our natural state. And I'm obsessed with our higher selves and bringing it into the earth plane, not just being in the I can be in the stratosphere all day long, but let's bring it to earth because we're living here on earth. We're human, we're spirit and human, and we all deserve to be connected, to be married to our higher self and to express that way. That's what I believe adds to healing and health
Right.
and well-being and coherence. And it's in the heart. It's in the heart.
It's so true too, because as you're sharing this, something that came to me that I was listening to a masterclass last week. And the woman that was running the masterclass, she had said, I wake up and I am a happy woman. I'm a happy woman with a flux of emotions. I'm a happy woman that's having a moment of anger, but I'm not going to identify as I'm angry. I my state of essence is I am a happy woman. You could choose like insert fabulous word here. You could be, an enlightened soul. You can be a joyful leader or a cheerful mom, whatever that is. And so one of the things I feel in this realm of consciousness, and we're in this, call it in the space of spirituality, what I have noticed is my intuition telling me that I am okay to honor my emotions because there's such a gift there. And so I don't want to say, well, I'm spiritual and I'm, Lucy Smiles Living Room and the writer and the inspirational, guide. So I shouldn't be sad or like I'm angry. Oh my gosh, how embarrassed would I be to have someone see that I'm angry? And I've learned really almost just only recently through, I would say 2 decades of being in this spiritual development and like learning more about myself, the gift of anger and the gift of fear and I've read the book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin De Becker many, many years ago. Super important. But the gift of frustration and being in our humanness, because and you mentioned this at the beginning about not bypassing our growth. And so I invite people through this conversation to gift yourself an opportunity to go in and say, like, where am I out of alignment and what's the gift for me? Right. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all of the things, right? You don't have to quit your job, leave, move to Mexico. That's not why I moved to Mexico. It's awesome in Mexico. But like, leave the relationship, this, that, and the other. It doesn't mean you have to do all those things, but taking some time to get out of the picture frame, because you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, and look at places in your life where maybe you're not honoring who you are. And maybe that's not why you're doing certain things from who you are, but who you think you should be. And I think it's really important that we can be okay with being angry or frustrated or sad or disappointed. And so I really just think that is really valuable that you shared that. And that really spoke to me, because being in our humanness is why we're here. Right. And I always make a joke with my girlfriends, because I do believe in sacred contracts. You and I are super aligned. And I always say, I think I was smoking cigarettes and was like 3 martinis in when I signed that sheet of like, you're coming in 1977. It's going to be a crazy time. And I'm like, I think I was a little tipsy when I signed the contract. And maybe I'll go out smoking cigarettes and enjoying some martinis on the way out. I have no idea. Not right now, though. But I think it's really important when we realize everything is on purpose. And so it allows us, it's not comfortable, but to be more accountable for where we are. Right. And so in terms of being accountable and just being more aware, self-aware, more conscious, can you shed some light, Julie, for those who, again, I'll go back to, maybe they're a little afraid. Maybe they are wanting to find that bravery or that courage to not have friendectomies where you're like divorcing all your friends that may not be in alignment with you, but to shift into a new community, to shift into a new tribe, or, proximity is power. One thing that I love is you can love your friends, love your family, and choose your peer group. So can you shed some light on what that looked like for you that may help to influence those or get people a little bit more excited of what that could look like for them if they're feeling a little bit stuck?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Actually, one little thing I'll say with emotions, I just heard this and I thought it was so fabulous, which is, our emotions, first of all, we're meant to have the whole spectrum of them, right? Just what we don't want to do is get stuck in a like crazy little tornado pattern in one.
Yeah.
But their emotions are indicators, not dictators. They're indicators. So we look at them as indicators. What are you indicating? What are you telling me? What's the message? That's helped me a lot. I'm still in the, I will be training probably the rest of my long life doing that. And knowing it's the same thing when I'm flying. I don't love turbulence at all. If you're sitting next to me, I'm so sorry, because you will become someone that I hug and probably put my head on your shoulder and might even cry and grab your hand. That's pretty typical. People know who they are. I mean, when it's really turbulent, I'm like, no control, don't like it. It brings up all that. So, it's an emotion, and it's one that comes up for many of us. Yeah, I think in terms of remind me, so you were asking about, remind me again.
Yeah. So bringing people into their community that serves them.
Yeah.
And if they're not in it now, how can we support them to be okay with merging into something more aligned?
So I think one of the most important shifts for many of us is less of a state of doing. We talked about this earlier, and more about who you're being. What's going to happen? So this is on a bit of a metaphysical level, but I really believe it starts here. So number one, really choosing. This is something I was actually thinking of this morning, and you said it before. I'm a joyful woman who has anger. I'm unconditionally loving woman who has all the emotions, like whatever you choose, but it is who you're being, right? So choosing, I'm somebody who I like to say, and actually do it while I'm tapping on the meridian points, like I honor my divinity. I stand in my power. I stand as a light. Like I affirm these things that I feel. If you don't feel them, find something else. And you want to feel it, and you want to, so it's who you're being is number one. So really look first, like, who am I being? Am I somebody who's judging others all the time and myself? Am I gossiping? Am I using my energy in a way that's actually not kind, productive, helpful, loving? That would be the first place before you even think about other people you want to connect to, because what's going to happen, this is what I've seen. And I said it when we started, like attracts like. That is just the way it is. So when you start showing up for yourself in integrity, you say you're going to do something and you do it. You are kinder to yourself. You take care of yourself. You give yourself the rest, the nourishment, the love that you would to your child or to a plant or to your animal. Like this is that first stage, that before you even look for who you're surrounding yourself with, become
Mm.
the person that you would want to connect with.
Yeah.
Become that person. Then that is part of my story in choosing. I'm somebody who I just have to share these conversations, their light, their wisdom. I have to. And I started to notice opportunities come and people come into my world that are the people that I've got to share. I've been able to share on my show. And, I've seen this with you. And I really believe before you even get strategic or think about, because we do get to choose our peer group, we do not get to choose our family. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I try to be unconditionally loving to every single person in my family group. Can't choose your kids, you can choose your kitty or your dog, so that you can choose. And you kind of, as you know,
I love my dogs.
them. Yep.
Yeah.
I would say notice, look, there's a lot of way to connect these days, right? Notice who's inspiring you.
Mm.
And not just who's glossy. It could be they're glossy, but also the energy. Look for their
Mm.
energy. What energy is inspiring you, right? So you had said it was Greg Braden or Marie, like just the
Mm.
energy of people. We've connected. I loved your energy right away. So,
Yeah.
I would focus more on energy and maybe do an inventory. Who in my circle do I feel more energized after I'm with that person? That's a really important question. If not, it doesn't mean you have to break up with them. It might mean I'm not going to be spending as much time. I'm going to be calling in people, human beings, not to put them on a pedestal, but who
Mhm.
have this kind of high vibrational energy. And I'm telling you, become that high vibrational energy. You can't help but attract those people. And it might mean joining a mastermind, going to an event, doing collaborations. All of those things are totally great ideas. That was very
Yeah.
helpful for me.
Yeah.
I find though, even as I wasn't able to travel for a couple of years as much, it it didn't matter. Your energy precedes you, and that's really the thing to focus on. I hope that answers the question. It's a little bit of a different take.
No, it's beautiful because as you were saying it, I was realizing that again, it is our responsibility for how we show up because only then do things show up to match us.
Yes.
And so that is pretty much like that's the only answer at the end of the day. And so when we can look and see what's going on around us and we're like, "Oh, that's not what I want." Well, how are you then why is it here?
Can I
Right?
add
Like,
something?
oh, yeah.
Is it okay? I totally cut you off. I have a
Oh my
thought.
god, please do.
Well, I'll just share the work that I'm doing on myself right now is a lot to do with like inner family systems and inner child, inner teen, and I've actually been starting a program around that, like and working with an energy medicine therapist, and it's so helpful to start identifying within us. We have aspects of us that are often unhealed. You're a little girl, you're
Mm,
a teen, and maybe you don't. If you don't, that is awesome. If you're listening, or maybe, you have none of that. Many humans have aspects that get stuck in our tissue, in our memory, in our body. And so if you're looking at like, I don't love the group I'm in, and I want to change who I'm being, what I'm not saying is to bypass the parts of you that might be showing up and having something to say, meaning I can notice sometimes, for example, when my daughter can get, a little snippy about stuff or like entitled, like every one of her friends has a brand spanking new car. I'm like, listen, we're not going to do that. You have
right.
college, go to private school. And my inner teen starts to get like, F you. Do you know I've spent so much money on private school? Like, what are you kidding? So then I have to be like, all right, it's okay. Like, let me be kind. So that's part of managing your energy too, is really getting that we're dynamic, we're multidimensional. There's a lot of aspects to us. So anyhow, that's a whole other conversation, but I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I love it because it really comes down to us. And so I think when I look back on my own journey of, when I first started on this experience, if everyone this is Angel, just so you know, she's my set manager. Um, she wanted to be part of this. She knew Julie was on. She doesn't hang out on any other podcast, but Angel's here. She loves
Hi,
Julie.
Angel. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
She's
So
like, hi.
cute.
So, and I realized that too, as I had started out. So you've pretty much confirmed how my journey was, is I started off kind of alone. I would be in Vancouver and I would go to the library. They'd have a little list, I didn't have a cell phone back then. It's 2004, 2005. And so I started on my journey enhancing who I was and learning more about who I am. And then through that, I ended up meeting like a group of people, and then I had them over to my condo and we had a VHS, and someone brought The Secret over. This is literally in like 2006. And so then my tribe started to grow. And then now I look back and what started as one ended up being, you know, a village actually. And so, but the only thing that was different, I didn't go and choose different friends. I chose to be different.
Yeah.
Not different because I was to be fixed or anything, but I chose to live my life differently. And that's actually when Lucy Smiles found herself on the bridge in Vancouver. It was literally, I had a spiritual awakening that I didn't understand what was going on, but it was literally about 3 to 4 months after I started shifting like how I show up in life that this came to me. And so I hope that can help people to realize like there's not a lot of work to be done. There's work to be done and healing. And I really believe that if you can go into healing as already whole, that's really a gift that you can give yourself. You don't have to go and break something that's like, or fix something that's not broken. Please don't go breaking anything. Um, I think it's really important that we're already whole, right? So Julie, there's so many things that you have been involved in, from heart math to, I know you're actually opening an intuition school coming up in, I think, October, that I'm so excited about. You have a beautiful community. You have been so blessed to magnetize these beautiful people that you've shared their story and their lives on podcasts. Can you I would like to ask you, and in closing, a lot of times I like to ask people a question like, what would you tell yourself? I wanted to ask you, I'm feeling called to ask you this. Um, and then also go through all of the beautiful offerings that you have on your website coming up that I've been a part of, that I think is really important, so people can, meet themselves where they need to be through you, if that's a calling. I know that your daughter just turned 18. And I know that you had shared a lot of your story about your teens. And so the millennials nowadays, no. It's so funny because I remember my father. I don't know if you remember, my dad would always say, I don't understand kids these days. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I totally get what he meant by that.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
so because, these beautiful souls that are actually so, so high frequency, I find that I'm looking at them through many that I know in my family and friend circles. Your daughter just turned 18 and she's about to fly on her own, journey. From someone like yourself who has done decades worth of exploration and excavation, can you answer a question around what would you tell your daughter or those that are just trying to honestly figure this stuff out, because so many things have changed? They don't walk with a paper resume into an office and say, can you hire me anymore? Right? I look back, I'm like, how did we do that? But it was actually easier, I think, for us. So I really want to give these beautiful souls, these young souls, some credit, because now they've got social media comparison. And for myself as a 47-year-old, I'm having a hard enough time. For someone who's done so much inner work, I'm still having a hard time, like, well, hers is better and I don't know how to do that way. So can you share what you would offer as some of your intuitive guidance, your gift of holding space for these beautiful souls and those any age watching? What advice you would give for them who are looking for the best path forward to find their best self in the next steps? What would that look like?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. And I'm going to close my eyes and just ask to be guided in this answer. It's already there, but I'm like, I really want this to be at the highest frequency and the highest consciousness. The first thing I heard, and I'm sensing and I believe in, and you kind of alluded to it, is to stay in your own magical lane, stay in your lane. There is no human being that is the same, right? We know this, 8 billions of us, to remember. And I love this statistic. I can't get the number right, but it's like something like 1 in 400 trillion billion chances of being born, meaning the egg, the sperm that came together, that's you, that's me. It's like, it's not even a I mean, it's
next to impossible.
you have a higher chance of winning a major lottery, and that's pretty low chance. So I tend to take a real spiritual approach. I think everything really is spiritual because we are spirit in a human body, in a human experience. And I know, you know, at 18, at 20, at 24, you may forget that. To remember that there is something so unique and pure and special and loved about you. And it is impossible to hear it when you're constantly comparing, despairing, right? To compare is to despair, when you're overly hustling and thinking and trying to figure it out. And it is so the opposite of what we're conditioned to believe. So truly learn to go and connect in at the heart level. That means feeling your way through, feeling what lights you up, feeling what feels right and what doesn't. And if you can start, and this is what I'd say to myself and what I'm playing with now, is make a pact, make a vow, marry yourself, just have a vow with yourself. I am going to promise myself to be as loving to myself, to honor what's true and to honor what's not true. So if it's a no, it's a no. If it's a maybe, it's a not now. Stay in your lane, trust yourself, and learn to really follow that energy of light and what feels fulfilling and purposeful. That is your roadmap. It is not what we've been told, which is to memorize a certain amount of things and to do a certain amount of things a certain way. I mean, I would probably get in trouble for this. My kids will probably go to college. College is great, and I'm not saying not to, but if your intuition is saying to you, no, go start that business now, and you can, just trusting your inner guidance, and you will learn to trust it the more that you practice tuning in. So underneath that is, you got to give yourself time. You got to do the opposite of what's happening. We are so distracted as a world, as a society. You've got to shut it all down. Shut it down, breathe, meditate, silence, 10 minutes a day at least. Every single human being needs it because our brain, it's overstimulated and we cannot hear the guidance to stay in our lane if we're not getting quiet. So that's what I would say. It's a lot of stuff, but in the end, you know, we're guided, and you got to be in your own silent inner world lane to hear it, to sense it, to feel it. It's a feeling. It's not a head thing.
Yeah. That is miraculous as a way for people to just have that guidance, because it is just around like, how are we operating? It's our operating system.
Yeah.
And one thing that I wanted to mention as well too, as you're talking about how we're all so unique, is you and I both love human design. So if anyone's out there and want to understand what human design is, I do have my coach. She's on the next 2 or 3 episodes, talking about human design. You work with someone fabulous around human design. You could find it online. So it's just something really powerful. And once I tapped into that a year ago, I realized all of the reasons why I wasn't something.
Yes.
And why things were more difficult for me, because that was not what I, and so we hit our heads against a wall. Why can't I do this like XYZ does? Because it's not meant for us. And so I really believe that how you just shared that was a reflection of our DNA is ours for a reason. Right. And so I think that's just so beautiful, Julie. Julie, you are such an honest gift. I'm so grateful that I, in this timeline, magnetized my energy and frequency over to be a part of your essence, your inner essence in this world right now. And if anyone here is interested in the beautiful offerings that Julie has, Julie, you have juliereisler.com. Do you want to share other areas or where we could best find you? And I know you have some beautiful upcoming programs happening. I don't want to forget those. So can you share?
You're so sweet. I'll do it really quick.
Oh, whatever.
I'll do it quick. So juliereisler.com is kind of like, you know, the homestead.
And you spell your last name is Reisler.
SLER. Yes,
Yep.
REI, like the store, I think in the States is REI. Yep, REISLER.
Yep.
REISLER. Yep, let me
Yep.
get it right. And I'm really excited. I'm going to be launching my first live version of Intuition School. It's starting on the portal date of 10/10 and it's ending on the portal date of 12/12, very intentionally,
Wow.
which is so cool. I know. I was like,
Oh,
yay, it works out so well.
wow.
And it's so fun. Actually, while I was freaking out on a plane, and then had a moment of like Zen, this whole framework came through. I wrote it, showed it to my husband. He's like, that's really good. I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but that just like came through me. So I'm teaching a framework with a lot of different practices and tools to learn how to really like learn not just to trust your intuition, but to sense it, to hear it, to feel it, and how to connect with your higher
Wow.
self and your spirit guides. So that's going to be starting in October. I have a beautiful community called the Sanctuary Membership. That's for light workers and seekers and soulful, heart-led entrepreneurs. If you want to, I do intuitive messages. It's been really fun for me. Like I actually give intuitive messages, and then we also meet once a month as well, live, and practice with different tools. We're going to be using a pendulum this time. It's fun.
Ooh.
Super, super fun. It's kind of like I always wanted to have a Hogwarts school myself. It feels like
Awesome.
so it's so fun. And then I have
Wow.
coaching certification, which begins in January, the Intuitive Life Designer Coach Academy. And
Okay.
I love that. Yeah, that's if you want to really learn how to coach at a high level. It's a very solid program. Mentor coaches, practicum, but it's something I love, and we've added more intuition to it, which makes me really happy.
I love it. And of course, your podcast, your top ranked podcast, the You-est You podcast with Julie Reisler on YouTube. I
Yes.
love YouTube because I get to see you and you have just such beautiful guests on your show. And it really is life changing, right? And so you're just a conduit to allow other people to shine so bright. And if it wasn't for that, your podcast, I don't know. I would have found you somehow, some way, but it was just super easy for me too with you following your light as a podcast host. So Julie Reisler, I'm so grateful for you. I feel like I'm going to take a walk on the beach and not even believe that this just happened. I'm so grateful. I am forever changed because of your guidance. Thank you for being you. And for everyone watching, I really want you to, if you can, just even download in your own intuitive way. What did you take from this message? What are some things that you can look at and identify in your own life that maybe need some tweaking? And also in that as well, too, we didn't really touch too much on gratitude, but I want to say, where in your life can you be so grateful for what you have? I think that is the stepping stone of change, if you will, in life is, a lot of times we're really programmed to look at the negative. Our ego and our brains want us to always find something to be working and running away from. That's why we're so good at doing it. I'm fabulous at it. But where can you find gratitude in your everyday? And having that gratitude is going to help to catapult you into just that next dimension of greatness. So let me know in the comments below if you have any nuggets, if you feel prompted to just subscribe and share this with those that maybe are looking for something where they can have extra guidance, extra wisdom, extra nuggets in their own life. And definitely, I have to say, from lengthy personal experience working with Julie, it has been a game changer for me and my business and my calling, and honestly, even my voice as a woman in ways that Julie doesn't even know. And so I'm so grateful for you, Julie. Thank you for taking time today. However I could support your journey. I'm looking so forward to Intuition School in October. And thank you so much. So grateful.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to say this show that you're doing, this heart-led dream, is such a blessing. And I know it's going to bless many, many human beings. And it's just an honor to watch you in your light and shining.
Thank you. Until next time, everyone, have a great day. And thank you so much for tapping into the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. We'll see you next time. Hey, friends, thank you again for following and tuning in to the Lucy Smiles Living Room podcast. It really does truly support my mission to help inspire you through our beautiful guests that I also want to thank who have come on to share their beautiful stories of transformation. If you want to connect with me privately, you can actually go right to my website, lucysmiles.com. Feel free to send to me a personal email. You can also catch my newsletter by subscribing, which also includes my weekly intuitive messages. If you're on social media, you can follow me with my handle, I am Lucy Smiles. And if this was inspiring to you and something helped support you on whatever the journey is that you are going through, please feel free to review, write a comment, and most importantly, if you can subscribe and share this episode and all our other episodes, that would be amazing. My dream and my mission is to truly help you to follow the magic that ignites your inner essence. And so until next time, we will catch you soon. I hope to catch you on the next episode.